We are 3 weeks into the CHL season, and here's what we know. The Winnipeg Ice are doing what they're supposed to be doing, as are the Seattle Thunderbirds and the Kamloops Blazers, as well as the Quebec Ramparts. It's a little bit muddier in the OHL, but with me today is editor-in-chief of the Hockey News, Ryan Kennedy. Ryan, welcome, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Let's dive right in. We might as well the third week of the Kia CHL top 10 rankings just dropped a little while ago, and for a third straight week, the Winnipeg Ice are number one. You can't be surprised about that.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at this Winnipeg roster and bit of a revenge tour from last year. Obviously the Edmonton Oil Kings were kind of the class of the league there, but you look at the weapons that the Ice had and still have today. Matthew Savoy, Connor Geekie, Zach Benson is going to be somebody that we talk about for the draft this year. Carson Lambos, they have so many weapons, and they have that great experience because they've kind of been through it before. So getting off to that great start, like you say, not surprising.
How much more dangerous are the Ice this year, given that Savoy and Geekie, Benson, they're all a year older. Connor McLennan's back. How much Daniel Hauser's got another year of experience under his belt? What's the most dangerous part about the Ice?
Well, I think it is that depth. And again, I think there's a lot of motivation there to prove that they can be the class of the WHL this season. And then, you think about all the NHL camp experience that a lot of those prominent players got in the sort of late summer, early fall. And I mean, the lessons you can learn, even if you're just there for a short amount of time, can really be valuable coming back to that team setting. So I think the Ice are in a tremendous position where they can draw on all that experience, and they can draw on those players who have been on a long playoff run, who have been around NHL players, and they can sort of filter that back to the younger players and really get that buy-in.
Are there any areas on that roster that you look at it and you're like, if they added a piece here, or if they just improved a little bit there, that they would be even more of a favorite?
Well, I mean, my personal bias is if you're going to win a championship, I think you need a big goaltender. So that would be one thing that I would look into. And again, like Daniel Hauser, obviously when it comes to the regular season, I think you're fine there. But I always get kind of worried, especially when you get into either a CHL final or when you get to the Memorial Cup and you're facing those high-end shooters and it's one game that could decide your entire season. Personally, I just feel more comfortable if you've got somebody that is, in the 6'2" and up range.
The one name that jumps in my head, and this is obviously purely speculation, but would be Sebastian Cossa, who's in Grand Rapids right now. He'd obviously his experience would be much welcomed there, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Number two this week, we've got the surging Sherbrooke Phoenix. I don't know if we really expected them to be maybe this potent this early on. No Julien Antil, no Xavier Perron. It seems to not be a problem for them this year.
Yeah, and they're getting some nice veteran scoring. You look at Justin Gill and then obviously Joshua Waugh, Montreal Canadiens draft pick. They're really leading the charge there. I mean, 21 points in 19 games for Justin Gill, pretty impressive. And Waugh not that far behind, 17-7. Ethan Gauthier is somebody that we're looking at for the draft. And then, of course, David Spacek really had a breakthrough season last year for the Phoenix on the back end. He continues his strong play. And again, you go down the lineup and, they got guys like Tyson Hines and Cole Huckins. Again, players that have a lot of experience, and both those guys are big boys. They're both 6'3", about 190 pounds. So when you look at this team, a lot of good elements. And then in terms of goaltending, I mean, they're really suppressing the opposition. You know, you look at Jacob Robillard, 2.22 goals against average, and the backup Samuel St. Hilaire, 1.73 goals against average, and a 917 save percentage for St. Hilaire. So you're getting what you need there. And just talking about bigger goaltenders, 6'2" for St. Hilaire, 6'3" for Robillard. So I mean, those are the kind of guys that can really win you big games if you need them back there. Right now, the Phoenix, I mean, they're just playing well all over. So their goaltenders don't necessarily have to steal them games, but I think you're seeing kind of a well-built team right
Justin Gill's got to be, the early candidate for surprise player of the year. Like you mentioned, he's got 21 points already. Last year he had 46 points over the entire season. So that's a nice bonus to have those guys there. And, no surprise with Joshua Waugh and with what he's doing, or Ethan Gauthier, we're expecting that. Number 3 this week, we've got the Quebec Ramparts. I don't think anybody's shocked at where they are. They were a good team last year and just a year older this year, more experience, a lot of depth there again, and more guys with NHL camp experience as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then, I think the other thing with the Quebec Remparts is, again, motivation. I know last year a bit up and down, and then of course, you have Patrick Roy leading things, and he's a guy that's not going to settle for mediocrity. He's a fierce competitor. We saw that during his Hall of Fame NHL career, and he has carried that over, to his post-playing days as a bench boss / executive. Again, a lot of experience up front. Theo Rochette has been around for quite a while now. Pierre-Olivier Waugh off to a great start. But I really like the balance and the depth that the Remparts have. You got Nathan Gauthier, James Malatesta. These are competitors. These are guys that play with a bit of an edge too. And, just again, looking up and down the lineup, this is a team that it feels like they're in gear right now. And, they're getting great goaltending from William Rousseau, a player that, again, has been on the radar for quite a while. Didn't turn out to be necessarily the NHL draft pick that maybe we thought he might have been at 16, 17. But having said that, off to a fantastic start. And, if the Remparts are going to go far, they're going to need that great net minding. And right now they're getting it.
Evan Noss, another hard-nosed guy on that team. They're just a tough team to play against, and no surprise, again, whether they are. Number 4 this week, once again, no change in the top 4 this week, but the Seattle Thunderbirds, and another team that we expect to be there, losing in the final last year to the Edmonton Oil Kings. But maybe we didn't expect them to be off to such a dominant start to the season. 7-0 so far. Ran over Everett last weekend. What is it that you like about the Thunderbirds?
Well, I like that Lucas Giona, for one, is red hot. He was WHL Player of the Week, Calgary Flames pick. This is somebody that I remember watching during the pandemic a little in the Alberta Junior A League, and he looked pretty impressive. He has that great size, and obviously has a scoring touch to him. I think ski back, obviously huge. Going to the Chicago Blackhawks in the top 10 of the draft. That's somebody that, I mean, he's just a general back there on the blue line, and that really activates different things. Reed Schaefer has been throwing his weight around, another first rounder. 2022 draft. It's time for Edmonton, and I think it's all about promise come through with. We looked at guys like Korchinski and Schaefer last year in their draft years. We were saying, okay, there's definitely something there, and Korchinski obviously put up huge numbers. I'm pretty sure he had an assist per game, which is pretty wild to think of, especially for a defenseman. But we knew that they were they were good then, but they were going to get even better. And I think we're seeing that promise come through. And that's the big thing, is these players are developing at the the pace we hoped they would, and the Thunderbirds are obviously reaping the rewards.
And right behind the Thunderbirds this week, up a couple spots, the Portland Winterhawks. New logo last year, new jerseys this year, and new jerseys, and they haven't lost yet. So obviously that's working out for them right now. 7-0, they beat the Memorial Cup hosts in a shootout last weekend. Did you see this coming from Portland this year?
I mean, not necessarily. You look at that lineup, and obviously they have talent, but it's not a lineup that has necessarily a lot of blue chip players in it. Having said that, a lot of these guys are stepping up. And, I look at Luca Cagnoni, the defenseman, 8 points in his first 7 games. He's eligible for the draft, the NHL draft this season. He's putting himself on the map. This is not necessarily a player, I think, that a lot of people might have pegged as sort of a high riser, but he's getting his name out there, and it's kind of nice to see players develop at that pace and really put themselves on the map. And you look at James Steffen, a player that I remember actually seeing in the OHL Cup for Little Caesars years ago, teammates with Luke Hughes, the New Jersey Devil prospect. But talking to scouts last year, they liked how much he had grown, especially physically. He gotten a lot stronger in the second half. Now we see him this season with another summer under his belt, 7 points in his first 5 games. So they're getting some nice contributions. And, I think it's just a matter of a team that's coming together. And like I say, they don't necessarily have a lot of big names, but, they've got some solid older players. Robbie From Delorme leading them in scoring. He's an 0-2 birthday, so it's nice to see a team just kind of form. I'm not going to say unexpectedly, but certainly playing better than maybe we anticipated.
Yeah, when they lose some of the talent that they lost to graduation last year to this year, you don't really expect them to take that extra step forward. But here they are. Other guys are stepping up, and it is nice to see. I'm going to quickly go off a little bit and just ask you, what do you think of those new Winterhawk jerseys? I know you're a jersey guy.
Them. Oh, I love them so much. I liked the first change they made, and then to go to more kind of Seattle Kraken accent colors, I was like, ooh, that's next level. So yeah, I'm loving it.
All right. Next, we've got the Gatineau Olympique. Last year, when I was talking to a few of those guys at the Top Prospects game, I mentioned to them that they kind of reminded me of those St. John Sea Dog teams of the early 2010s, 2011s. A lot of high-end talent, but maybe they were just a year away still. They're a year older now. They seem to be loaded with drafted guys. They've made a couple of additions. What do you think of the Gatineau Olympique this year?
Well, I mean, they're just so fun, right? And like you said, starting off with Zach Dean as the leading scorer, but then that blue line, right? Like Isaac Bellevaux, who they brought in, if I'm not mistaken, last year early on to sort of help out those younger players. Tristan Luneau, and then Samuel Savoy is a player it's probably Savoy. But he was a very intriguing prospect just because he's so nasty to play against. And then, Chicago ends up snapping him up. You look at just sort of the depth they have, and it's just fun, right? And I think that, they were young last year and they were really sort of coming together. Now we're seeing the team kind of mature together, and again, a lot of fun names. Hakan Hanelt is another player, the Washington Capitals draft pick. Bring in Robert Orr, aka Bobby Orr, who Carolina snapped up. So if you're a prospect watcher, Gatineau, obviously a very fun team.
And down a couple spots this week, we've got the Memorial Cup hosts. They are the only team that lost a game in the top 10 this week, even if it wasn't a shootout, losing to Portland, like I said earlier. Kamloops finally gets Logan Stankoven back, Fraser Minton's back. They look like they're ready to take off.
For sure. And, for them, it's a marathon, not a sprint. As Memorial Cup hosts, you want to be clicking on all cylinders at the right time. And, we've seen teams obviously lose early in the playoffs and still win as hosts. It just happened, as a matter of fact, last year. But, with Kamloops, I think, they want to be healthy. So, Fraser Minton, obviously he got hurt while he was in Toronto. Logan Stankoven, I was so impressed with him at the World Juniors, playing on that awesome line with Kent Johnson and Tyson Forster for Canada. Stankoven setting up the golden goal and just had a great tournament overall, I thought. This is a player that, might have threatened for a spot with the Dallas Stars this year. But having said that, I remember talking to Rich Peverly, who works in Dallas's front office, and he was saying, the chance to win is so crucial for development. It's such a good thing to have,
right?
Whether it's a Calder Cup in the AHL or a Memorial Cup, in junior. So for Stankoven, the sort of silver lining of not making the Stars is that he has the opportunity to lead his team to a Memorial Cup, and that would just be huge for his development. He's already showing himself to be a smaller center, but the type of smaller center that could get it done in the NHL because he plays the right way, sort of in that Braden Point mold. And then you look at the rest of the lineup. Matthew Semenov was a player that took some nice strides last year. He's going to be important again. Caden Bankier obviously leading them in scoring, and I have to think that as Memorial Cup hosts, you're probably going to see them add before the deadline, as teams tend to load up or at least bring in one or two guys that can help out for that playoff run in that Memorial Cup. So, Kamloops is fun now, but I'm kind of curious what they look like when all is said and done. They could be even more exciting.
Yeah, I don't think Logan's going to complain about having the opportunity to play for Memorial Cup in his hometown with his hometown team. It's a pretty good story there. Up a spot also this week, the Mississauga Steelheads started off the year in the preseason rankings in the top 10, fell out for a week. Owen Beck comes back after an impressive camp in Montreal, and Mississauga's doing what we expected them to do. They're 3-0 last week. So what do you like about Mississauga? What do you see them doing this season?
Well, I like that they're a hard team to play against. If you look at that lineup, Ethan Del Mastro, the defenseman, Chicago Blackhawks pick, it plays with a nice edge. And then Luca Del Bel Beluz, the Columbus pick, just a great two-way center, but he can be that shutdown guy for you. And then, you look at Owen Beck and his speed and what he can do there. This is a team that gives you a lot of different looks. And I thought, last year they played Kingston a lot with Shane Wright, and they handled them fairly well, given, how hard it is to play against Shane Wright. And I give a lot of credit to Mississauga for doing so. So the bit of a sneaky team where, they've got obviously some solid draft picks, but just sort of all around the lineup. I think Mississauga can throw different things at you. And, James Hardy, a player that's starting to heat up, the overager, something to prove. He wanted to be drafted in the NHL. It didn't happen, but, he's been to some rookie camps. And, I wouldn't be surprised if he pushes for a free agent contract at the end of the season.
I know you're doing a podcast of your own later today, and you have a mailbag for that. So here's a question for your mailbag. Is there a better name in hockey right now to say than Luca Del Bel Beluz?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a fun one. I love it. LDBB.
At 9 and 10 this week, we have a couple more perfect teams in the Ottawa 67s, which seem to be shocking everybody in the OHL right now, let alone the CHL. and the Red Deer Rebels. Also, they are 7-0. What is it about these two teams that that's been impressive so far to kick off the year?
Well, starting with the Ottawa 67s, I mean, they're just filling the net. It's high event games with the 67s. Jack Beck, 11 points in 6 games. Luca Pinelli, who's up for the draft this year, 10 points in 6 games. And you just kind of go down the line. Everybody's kind of contributing. Fun to see Henry Muse, a high draft pick, just 16 years old. He's making contributions from the blue line already, 3 points in 6 games. So, it's funny. It's like their goaltenders don't have the best stats, but they're getting the job done. It's bend, don't break in Ottawa. So you can't really complain there. And then, you look at the Red Deer Rebels, and this is a team that, they always seem to be in the mix. Obviously, well coached and a great market there. So, in the past couple of years, I think they've been decent, but this year really kind of stepping up to the plate. And you look at Jaden Grube, the big New York Rangers pick. That's somebody that has been making big contributions to the team for years now, really. And that's the kind of player that you want to lean on because, again, he has that experience. He's been to NHL rookie camps. 9 points in his first 5 games, so that's pretty impressive. They have a pretty experienced team. I look at guys like Christopher Seedoff that have been around for a while. Very interesting that they got Mats Lindgren, who obviously last year, played for the Kamloops Blazers and was pretty solid, got drafted by the Buffalo Sabres. He comes in their back end. So, yeah, an interesting team, and it'll be fun to see if they can continue that momentum.
Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, the team that started in our preseason rankings at the number 4 spot, which would be the OHL's Guelph Storm. Been a rough start for them. They've only got 1 win so far. They're a better team than what we've seen. What's going on with Guelph? Obviously, they had a coaching change, an unexpected coaching change. But what do the Guelph Storm need to do other than stop the pucks from going in the net and score more goals to get back into where we expect them to be this year?
Yeah, I think it really is cohesion. And, you look at some of those results and, I know they got battered by Saginaw really early on. I think they got to settle down because, I mean, they do have the talent there, but if for some reason it's just not clicking. And, when you have a team that has Sasha Pasajoff and Matthew Poitras and Michael Buchinger, like the talent is there. And, Cam Allen on the back end, I mean, if you had the NHL draft today, he's probably the first defenseman off the board, potentially even a top 10 pick. So it's not a matter of talent. I think it's a matter of, it's a rough start. Things aren't going their way, but there's plenty of season left. So, they just need to find their game because the talent is there.
I'll quickly stick with the OHL. We talked about the possibility of Logan Stankoven earning a spot with Dallas. That went to his future teammate, Wyatt Johnston from Windsor right now. Mason McTavish is obviously up, and Shane Wright is also up. Of those 3, do they all stay? Does one of them stay? Does anybody come back? What do you think for those 3 players and the possibility of returning to junior or sticking in the NHL?
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like, Mason McTavish, he's proved all he needs to prove at the junior level. And, the incredible World Juniors he had in his summer, I think just put a stamp on it. So I think he's pretty safe in Anaheim, especially the way that team is developing. Shane Wright, sort of been in and out of the lineup for Seattle. I think they're just kind of letting him, sort of ease into the water. But I kind of feel like he's the sort of player where, because he's such a good 2-way guy, even if he isn't a bottom 6 role in the NHL, he can be of use to Seattle. And, him and Matty Beniers are the future Matty Benier is really the present as well down the middle for the Kraken because they don't have a lot of depth at center. So I think they do need to continue to develop Shane Wright at the NHL level. Wyatt Johnston's interesting because, you could say I was like, well, he's pretty young, but I mean, he's just so good, you know? And this is a player I remember during his draft year, which was during the pandemic. Scouts were kind of joking with me. They were like, don't put him too high because we want to take him. We don't want other people knowing about this kid. And obviously Dallas picked him up, and he was, great at the World Under-18s that year. Obviously, huge season with Windsor last year. I'm sure the Spitfires would love to have him back. But if he's contributing with Dallas, then, the Stars might say like, hey, we got a good thing going here. And I think in particular, that's an NHL team that's very interesting because they have the veterans, but then they have that young guard that's taking over, led by Jason Robertson and a couple of other guys like that. So, I mean, Wyatt Johnston kind of fits into what they're doing. So that'll be an interesting one to watch for sure.
I don't think Windsor Spitfires fans are going to like that answer. I know the Bulldogs fans and France fans, they were expecting that, but I know the Spitfires fans, the Spitfires Windsor, they're honorable mention again this week, and they've only lost in overtime a couple times, so they haven't even lost in regulation yet, and they could sure use that firepower back. We got to talk about Connor Bedard. He's doing Connor Bedard things. There was the tweet over the weekend that kind of went viral over how many shots he's taken and the points that he's putting up. He's got, after being shut out in his first game, 9 goals and 20 points since. So, 2 points a game. What do you see Connor Bedard doing the rest of the way here? He's got a little more talent around him now in Regina. They seem to be looking to add even more around him, build around him to try to maximize the final year of Connor Bedard in the CHL. What does Regina need to do, and what do you think Connor Bedard will do?
I would definitely like to see Regina add, because something we've seen a lot during his Pats career is Bedard essentially creating something by himself, sometimes out of nothing, because he is magic out there. But he does a lot of heavy lifting. So I would love to see them get a little more depth so that teams have to honor one of the other lines on the team, then they can't just focus on Bedard. Not that it's really helped opponents so far. He's pretty unstoppable as is. But, as the season goes on, obviously it's a tough season. There's going to be a physical toll. It would be good to allow him to have a little more space out there when he needs it. Again, it hasn't been a problem so far. I love how physical and edgy Connor Bedard has been playing. And this goes back to the World Juniors in the summer, where he was downright nasty at times. It was fun to see because he's not a big kid. But he's carried that over to his season with Regina, on top of the incredible scoring prowess. So, I mean, keep doing what you're doing, Connor Bedard. And for the Pats, I mean, they know what they have there. It's just a matter of surrounding him with more talent to make sure that they can get the most out of, as you said, what's clearly going to be his final season in Regina, and maybe do some damage in the playoffs.
How many of those other WHL teams that we mentioned earlier are calling John Paddock, hey, what's it going to take to pry Connor?
Yeah. How far is it from North Van to Kamloops?
You mentioned the feistiness, and it kind of reminded me of Connor McDavid in his draft year. And I don't want to compare Bedard to McDavid because, that's not fair. But I look back, and in McDavid's draft year, he got off to such a hot start. He had, I think it was 42 points in his first 14 games. Then he was shut out in one of his only 2 games of that year. Couple games later, he ended up getting in a fight and breaking his hand, and then missed a bunch of time. As much as you don't want to compare the two players, people are going to draw those comparisons. But the feistiness, is it just something about those players where they've just taken a bit more abuse for a couple more years, and they're finally like, you know what, enough's enough. We've got we've got to stick up for ourselves. We got to show them that we're not going to back down.
I think it's an overall competitiveness that you see with these phenoms. And I think, McDavid learned that he can't be dropping the gloves because his hands are lethal in different ways and must be protected at all costs. With Bedard, he's throwing his weight around, and I think that's fine. But yeah, obviously you don't want to see him actually fighting.
No.
You can have other guys on the Pats do that for him. But I think, I'm sure there are some frustrations at always being the guy that's targeted by the other team. But I also think that even if it's subconsciously, these guys were looking at the next level and saying, I'm playing against my peers right now. Next year, I'm going to be going against the biggest, baddest players on the planet. I need to prepare myself for that, both mentally and physically. Like I said, it might even be subconscious. They might not even realize they're doing it, but I think there's a ramping up where they know that the next level is going to be a lot harder and that nothing's going to be given to them. There won't be much ice time, or won't be much space out on the ice. So they got to learn to push through.
Right. Well, we might as well keep going with that WHL draft class because it's deep, it's dangerous, and they're a lot of fun to watch. We got Zach Benson, Braden Yager, Nate Danielson, Riley Heidt, Andrew Crystal. I'm sure Cohen Zemer. The list goes on and on of high end prospects out of the WHL this year. Who are the couple guys that you really enjoy watching, and how many of these guys do you think could end up going in the first round this year?
I mean, I think it's going to be a pretty good amount. I think it's going to be one of the better dub years we've seen in quite a while. And obviously, Connor Bedard going number one helps that. But, I'm very intrigued by Zach Benson. I mean, he's not a big kid, but all he does is produce. Braden Yager is somebody that I've been watching for years. I actually saw him at a skills camp in Toronto when I think he was 14 or 15, and he was even impressive back then. Riley Heidt was with him, actually. Andrew Crystal, that's a player where I'm very intrigued to see what his high end is, because again, not a big kid right now, pretty skinny. He does get pushed off pucks in battles, but you could fix that. You can get in the weight room, you hang out with Gary Roberts or another, high end nutrition guy, and he'll get you the right food to put on the right kind of pounds. What Andrew Crystal does have is some scintillating offensive moves. And the way that he can produce, I know NHL teams are going to be very, very intrigued by him. So, when I think about the first round, I mean, it's going to be at least half a dozen players, maybe even 7 or 8. I think you toss Nate Danielson in there for sure. Riley Heidt will be interesting. I think it depends on just, how well he produces in Prince George. I would also say, Scott Ratzlaff, the goaltender with the Seattle Thunderbirds, probably not a first rounder, but probably one of the first goaltenders we see get drafted. And obviously he had a great summer with Team Canada as well. So yeah, great year for the Dub.
Let's keep talking about some younger guys. One's maybe not for this year's draft. Obviously, Tanner Howe is a big name there. But let's go over to let's start in the OHL, and with a couple of guys that I know you enjoy watching, former Mississauga Senators teammates that went 1-2 in the draft. They're rivals now in Erie and Saginaw with Malcolm Spence and the exceptional Michael Misa. They played their first game against each other over the weekend. Spence got the game tying goal and then the OT winner. So he's got bragging rights right now. But what is it about those two guys that just, kind of gets you fired up?
Yeah, I mean, they're so much fun to watch. And what I love is that because Malcolm Spence is a late birthday, him and Misa are the same NHL draft class, even though Misa, as you mentioned, got the exceptional status to join the league a year early. But, Misa broke Connor McDavid's OHL Cup scoring record at the U16 level last year. I was at that final game, and we were all kind of just whispering in the press box, like, oh, he's getting there. He's like, oh, he could tie him. And then he actually did it for Mississauga. fantastic game. So obviously a highly skilled player. Has got great quickness, great hands, and when I look at Malcolm Spence, he's got the great shot. He's a bigger body than Misa. Great character kid too. Just a tremendous leader, and I always go back to that OHL Cup when Mississauga won. Obviously, they're all out in the ice, and then the families come out on the ice and the media, and a bunch of just little kids just ran out all over the place. And Malcolm Spence was signing autographs for everyone. He was taking time with the kids. It's just those little things where, it's like he couldn't leave the ice. There was always somebody else to talk to or another fan to greet. And, he doesn't have a lot of help in Erie, but he's still producing and showing some good early results. Misa, I think, Saginaw is a great spot for him because he's not alone. You have Josh Bloom, you have Matthias Sapovalev, you have Pavel Minchikov on the backs to play with. And I think that's really going to help him as, a 15-year-old in his first OHL season where, again, he's not the biggest body out there, but this is going to give him time to develop and, hopefully turn into a very special player.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be fun to watch. Their next game, for everybody who should tune in on CHL TV to watch that, is November 18th. That one should be good as well. Let's head east and head to Victoriaville and talk about the goalie, Gabriel Dagg, who has played 3 games so far, but he was the 2nd overall pick in the Q draft. That's the highest goalie drafted since 2000 in the Q. And he's putting up some pretty gaudy numbers to kick off his year. Also a late birthday, so he's still only 15. What have you seen from Gabriel Dagg so far, and the Victoriaville Tigre?
Well, I love the frame, right? 6'4", and obviously still pretty lanky, but that's fine. Goaltenders built differently. The composure to come in and not only put up great numbers, but I'm pretty sure he had a shutout the other night as well. Just tremendous. And I would say in general, Canada has struggled to produce really high-end goalies lately. And these things are cyclical and they can change. But even at the NHL level, you don't see a lot of elite Canadian keepers right now. So for Dagg and the Tigre, I think this is a great first step. And Victoriaville, obviously, you got to sort of keep tabs on him, make sure that the load isn't too overwhelming, and that he gets the development time he needs. Because if he does, I think he has all the tools to be very special.
Yeah, it'll be. I'm sure he'll earn a spot at the under-17s this year, so it'll be interesting to see how he performs there. One more name I want to touch on. He's only played 1 game in the WHL so far, but it was a doozy. That is Gavin McKenna, 14-year-old Gavin McKenna, who doesn't turn 15 until December. The first pick in the 2022 WHL Bantam draft. Pretty big guys for his age. I believe he's 5'11" already. 4 assists in his first and only game in the WHL, but they were all primary assists. What did you think about his debut?
I mean, just smashing, right? I mean, this kid is so much fun to watch. There's a reason Medicine Hat took him when they did. And, it's fun for me because, yeah, he's years off from the NHL draft, but you start tracking him now and seeing what the progress is. And, he goes back to the prep ranks with Southern Alberta or South Alberta Hockey Academy. He's averaging 3 points a game. And you don't want to hype these kids up too much, but that's better than Connor Bedard did in his last season of prep. And we know what Connor Bedard has become. So Gavin McKenna, obviously a tremendous future for him coming down from the Yukon. Always fun when you get kids from different parts of the country. And yeah, I'm just super excited. And I'm sure Medicine Hat can't wait to get him full time next year.
We've, at the CHL, we launched CHL TV last year for the first time through all 3 leagues. The year before that, we had the WHL and their bubble on it. How much nicer is it for somebody like yourself to be able to tune in and be able to flip through all 60 teams and just go through that app the way it is now, all in one spot on the CHL app and just be able to, the quality is the same across the board now versus before where we were kind of scrambled a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, consistency is huge, right? And for me, my favorite thing to do is I actually watch games kind of the day after. I don't mind that it's spoiled because when I'm watching games, I'm watching usually for particular players, and so you want to get a sense of them. But with so much hockey, you only have so much time. So I really enjoy the fact that I can watch games afterwards. I can watch the replays and I can kind of skip around and I know that I can find what I need to get the information to write articles, talk to scouts, get that background info. So when I'm doing draft rankings or when we're working on Future Watch at the Hockey News, I've got that info. So yeah, for me, it's always like I love the game of the week. I think it's really fun, and I love just kind of going into the archives and going back to games and seeing what was up.
Yeah, I think we were excited last year when we launched it across the board. We're even more excited this year, combining the CHL TV app with the CHL app, so it's all in one spot now. So that makes it even better for us. Before I let you go, what are you guys working on at the Hockey News right now?
Well, our goalie issue just came out. It's on newsstands now. And then the next issue, which will be very intriguing for CHL fans, is Prospects Unlimited, a magazine we've done for a few years now. I love it. The centerpiece is the top 100 players, 21 and under. So it's not just NHL players. It's not just drafted players. It's anybody. So you're going to see Connor Bedard. You're going to see Gavin McKenna. You're going to see Michael Misa and Malcolm Spence on that list, along with guys like Mason McTavish and Logan Stankoven. Maybe Gabriel Daigle even cracked the top 100. I'm not sure yet. It's early. But that's what, for prospect fans, for CHL fans, that's a must-have issue. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That is a must-have. I remember a couple of years ago flipping through it and seeing Quinton Byfield in there while he was still playing with the York Simcoe Express. Great issue. It's a must-have for any prospect fan or even CHL fan. Ryan, appreciate you taking the time today. This was a lot of fun, and I hope we can do it again soon.
For sure. Thanks for having me.